Hey, this is Michael Malarkey from Burial Clouds and Shady Side, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show this week, we have Courtney Taylor-Taylor of the Dandy Warhols. The Dandy Warhols just kicked off a big U.S. tour. They've got 2 excellent new singles out, and they've done it all. Mainstream success, hit singles, and this episode has everything. Courtney talks about touring with David Bowie, wrestling with Robin Williams, drugs, fame, heartbreak. Courtney is a super interesting guy, and this conversation has everything. But first, some business. Here's how you can support The New Scene. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at New Scene Pod. Reviews. Give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you write a nice review, I'll read it at the end of the show during the New Scene Community Hour. Shirts. The New Scene has t-shirts and a long sleeve shirt for sale. Search The New Scene at Death Wish Inc. You'll see our store. Pick up a shirt. It's a great way to support the show. Also, you can always email me at newscenepod@iodinerecords.com. And don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. They've got big news this week. Stretch Armstrong, The Revealing 12-inch EP is up now for pre-order. This is Stretch Armstrong's first new music in nearly 2 decades, but it doesn't sound like even a minute has passed since they released their last music. They're back, and they're better than ever. You can hear the EP right now on your streaming service of choice. Pre-order the vinyl, which will be released May 10th. And this is the Stretch Armstrong we know and love. It's heavy, it's melodic, it's everything we want from them. I was just listening to it earlier this afternoon. Get it. Just get it. The Revealing. That's my favorite song. That is a jam. Excellent, excellent EP. One Line Drawing, Sketchbook, the 2X LP is up now for pre-order. No Man, Glitter and Spit, the LP, that's up for pre-order. That comes out March 29th. And remember, No Man has 2 gigs coming up with Strike Anywhere. May 3rd in Richmond, Virginia, and May 4th in Brooklyn. And don't forget to join the Iodine Noise Cult, Volume 3. If you sign up, you'll get every new Iodine vinyl release in 2024. That's 14 records. And you also get rare deluxe variants, free shipping, bonus flexies, hand-numbered Obi strips. There's only 50 spots, so sign up soon. Also, don't forget to support this month's sponsor, Persistent Vision Records. Persistent Vision is a DIY-focused label based in Richmond, Virginia, and it's home to many bands we know and love. Page 99, Abak, Lagrimas, Massa Nera, Goetia, and others. You can order online now at persistentvisionrecords.com or deathwishinc.com. And here is some updates from the label. Out March 15th, Putrid Obsolete. That's the sophomore LP from Prisoner. 8 songs of nightmarish blackened crust, metal, and harsh industrial noise. It's available on limited colored vinyl and cassette. See Prisoner on tour in the Southeast US. That's March 13th through the 22nd. Also, Page 99 has an April Midwest tour with Massa Nera. Tickets are on sale now. March 15th, you can pre-order the Departure of Consciousness LP from Farn. This is a 10-year anniversary reissue of the debut LP from this Funeral Doom ensemble. It's available on limited colored vinyl. They just announced upcoming East Coast and West Coast tour dates in June, so make sure you check those out. Also, they will have a brand new LP out later this year on Persistent Vision. Make sure you follow Persistent Vision on Instagram at Persistent Vision Records. Okay, so listen, check back in with me in segment 3. We'll catch up. I'll tell you everything that's going on, but right now, we are going to speak to Courtney Taylor-Taylor of the Dandy Warhols. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Courtney Taylor-Taylor. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
Yes, Courtney, it's great to have you here. Look, there's a lot going on with you. The Dandy Warhols just put out an excellent new single. I'd like to help you with your problem, and you'll be leaving for a pretty comprehensive tour this coming Sunday, and we'll talk about all of that and more. But first, I want to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'd rather talk about how I was doing pretty much any day besides today or yesterday. These have been the worst.
What's going on?
Well, as you said, I just have a lot of balls in the air, as they say, a lot of plates spinning. We just haven't really taken record releasing seriously as a business for quite a long time, and we forgot how grueling it is, and there's so much work and so much content to create and so many other people's interests to take into consideration. It's not the wonderfully selfish act that being an artist or creating art is. That is just pure selfishness. I've only tweeted once ever, put a tweet, and I only I guess at that point I just thought, why who cares? I don't want to get involved in this thing. But I had said it had occurred to me that all art is an extreme example of passive aggressive behavior, and that I think that was a great realization, because it also then helps to define the difference between an artist and an entertainer. Art and entertainment are very separate at the beginning of the process, right? Like, an artist cannot make art with an audience in mind. You shut down, you can't please them in your mind, and their opinions are overwhelming and soul crushing, whereas an entertainer can't do their thing without an audience in mind, and they'd be stupid to invent entertainment without a specific audience in mind. So once you get into the business end, it's all entertainment, and it's grueling work and organization that any artist worth their salt has a pretty low percentage chance of being good at.
Do you ever take an entertainer approach to, like, let's say you're going to be in a certain city? Would you cater the set list to that city, or do you just
only if it's Texas?
So you've been interested in music since you're very young, right? I read in another interview that you were just fixated on the radio, telling people to be quiet so you could hear the songs coming out of it.
Well, no, not the songs. It was just one song. Because I remember being 4, and whether that's 3 or 5, I don't know, but it was right in that zone of being, about 4 years old. The radio and music was just another thing, as they are to children. A fork, a dog, or Barbra Streisand singing on the radio. These are all things. The kitchen table is a thing. The carpet is a thing. Music is a thing, right? They're all points are equal on the continuum. And then I heard Killer Queen. And boy, I did not understand what was happening to me. This is a feeling. And so then the radio meant something different to me. And I had one, I don't know why, but I had one with a clock on it, a clock radio, and it was fortunately lit with a glow in the dark band around it. So I could pretend I was asleep at night and then get out of bed, turn it on very quietly, and look for this one thing that gave me this amazing feeling. And I specifically remember that a similar feeling, and that, but it wasn't the same song. This was Radar Love. And that also seemed to me to be this part of this other world that could exist. And I put together that feeling must be, I had an older brother, and then I had babysitters that were like long-haired dudes that drove 67 jacked up Camaro Super Sports and things. And so the word cool was around quite a lot. And I put together that must be what those two songs, and a whole world apparently there must be of songs that feel like that. That feeling, that must be what it feels like to be cool. And that's kind of what music was. And whether it's you know, Chopin or I don't know, Chet Baker, you know, it's still frames what I feel about music and what I can open my heart to in music at all. It has to pass through this first shape filter, which is cool. And, you know, far be it for me to try to define exactly what that means. It's, you know, that's what it is nonetheless. I'm pretty certain.
Does that still apply today? Does it still need to pass through that certain filter of cool? Like for me, I go by feelings mostly. So if music gives me a certain feeling, I'm in. What about
Well,
you?
that's what I'm saying, is that's the feeling. That's the word that describes the feeling. And obviously we all have our own, you know, version of that. Like if I say dog, we all see a different dog. So, but my cool is somewhere in the place that Radar Love and Killer Queen occupy. You know, and then obviously as you go on through in life, you know, one day in college you realize that the Velvet Underground occupies that space, and you go, geez, how come I've never even heard of this band before, you know? And T-Rex and all sorts of weird stuff. Actually, when I was about 7, we'd go hunting, because we have Eastern Oregon. There's you know, good hunting in Eastern Oregon. And so there would be a day where you'd take the kids. So my brother and I and maybe some other young cousins would get to go. And we get to carry guns. We get to carry, like, you know, 20 caliber rifles and not shoot them. And probably weren't ever bullets in them. Then the day that they wanted to actually get something, they would leave us back at the double wide. And at a certain age, and I think it was 7, the older kids could go. That left me as the youngest. I was there by myself, and my total gun-toting, small town, Eastern Oregon redneck cousin, older one, before he left, he goes, "Here," and he put a record on the you know, his little record player in his little bedroom with the brown wood paneling on the walls, and hit play, and then tipped up the record cover, and it was Ziggy Stardust of all things. No country rock going on there. And that was another real pivotal moment for me, uh, what that was. And so, yeah, I spent many years just like, okay, that's rock and roll. I was told that's rock and roll. You like rock. And so that's what I thought I was going to do pretty much my whole life. It was all a series of moves and plans and schemes to put myself into a situation where I could just do this. That's what I would do. That's what I would, you know, figure out.
And you did, right? You were in marching band and you went to college for recording and all kinds of stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I went to a jazz college, which uh, was great. I could afford it. I was working as a janitor at a strip club at the time and making a lot of money. Uh, so making the kind of money you could raise a family on back in that day. And yeah, so I could afford college. I could afford the local, the local college, which meant you've got jazz legends that had played with, the Supremes, played on Motown, played, Motown sessions, and the Doors bass player on, a couple of their records, like all these heavyweights that, some were heroin addicts and they were, some were alcoholics, but they were all these legendary players, and scholars, because to be a jazz head, you have to be a music scholar as well. You have to be able to handwrite charts. You have to be able to play multiple instruments adequately, and then be a bona fide virtuoso at one.
Can you do that? Can you read music and write charts and all of that?
Yeah, I haven't for decades, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I had to handwrite charts. This was the late 80s when I graduated from that school. Yeah, you had to handwrite charts for maybe eight-piece combos, at the most. Some of the dorks would go crazy and do, 15 piece, they were brown nosing like graduating top of the class at a college out off Killingsworth, and I-5 is gonna really whatever. But yeah, and there were bullet holes and bullet dents in the chalkboards and shit, and it was really cool. I felt really, really slightly frightened out there, and I felt real cool going to a super heavyweight, dirty city with, Chet Baker lived here, so he could shoot smack without being harassed by the police in the 50s. And there's, this, we got Mel Brown, and we've got Leroy Vinegar, and, we've got legendary cats from old, crusty, creepy old Portland here. So that was, yeah, I really treasured that whole thing, and what a different sound to accompany the word cool that was.
Yeah, it sounds like a great place to get your chops and learn about music. And you
Yeah.
wanted to be a drummer originally, right? That was your goal?
Well, when I was 9, and I know, again, to be exact here, I was 9 because the bus stop in 3rd grade was in front of my house, and I was ruminating on this song that boy, I wish I could remember her name, but our choir class teacher in 3rd grade was trying to teach us the sound of silence, and they have to stop and then see if the kids could recite it, and it was making me nuts. I wanted to just shriek at her, just play the fucking song. It was so powerful and so beautiful, and it was not rock. It was, and it crushed me. Oh my God, this is song. This is the power of a song, the power of song, not the power of rock. I don't know if I'll ever be this good. And so I chickened out right then and there, and said, I'll be a drummer. That'll be fine. There's always drums in rock. In a lot of ways, maybe that's the difference, probably, to me. That rock simply had a rock drummer.
Drummer is good too, because somebody always needs a drummer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, somebody always needs kind of everything except a bass player. There used to be a ton of bass players because, you pretty much play one string and a little bit of another string. But also, well, that being said, if you don't mind my digressing down that rabbit hole for a minute, the post punk thing was great because punk obliterated stadium guitar heroics and all the cheese that had accumulated around the wake of truly great artists that were guitar heroes that could solo like beautifully, and then you get a wave of imitators, and it needed to be swept out the door at that point in time. So for post punk, the only thing you could do is have the bass be like a lead instrument, and the guitars had to become very creative and a bit Bauhaus, a bit minimalist, and just the structure and the approach to what you're doing is pretty much the whole thing. You don't need to come up with like expressive, deep, long melodies or you shouldn't, or you're going to be thought of as being real lame. So bass, I did live through, part of my musical life was when bass players were the most accomplished. So if you're a bass player, don't think that I meant that when I said, you know, everybody's needed except bass players. That's not what I really said. Okay. So just saying that out. We shouted down in the streets of Brooklyn or anything.
Yeah, that's a running joke. I have a running joke with some friends where like, someone mentions a bass player or like shows a picture of one and we'll be like, what is that? I never saw that before, but it's just a joke. You're needed. Of course you're needed. Bass is one of the instruments I play, so I get it. I'm not offended.
Have you seen the little show called, I think it's called something like Bass Players Are People Too?
No.
And it's Geddy Lee just goes and hangs out with other famous bass players, and Chris Novoselic lives down the highway from this small town that I have a house in, and so we have a lot of same friends, and my buddy was making a video for him, and he came over and goes, "Hey, check this out," and it's Chris and Geddy Lee, but you get to see what Chris Novoselic decided to do for his lifestyle. And I think it's the coolest, most Pacific Northwest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's really great. It's like
I got to check that out. I'm curious. I'm imagining some cabin imagery.
Oh, dude.
Maybe some flannel or something.
You think? Oh yeah, keep going. You're getting warmer.
Pine trees.
Oh yeah, it's really great. There's chickens involved, and oh my god, it's really charming. It's pretty awesome. I've only met him a couple times, or for some reason our paths never really crossed, but even in that small kind of backwoodsy Pacific Northwest dump of an area that we love.
So you've been in that area. Have you ever lived anywhere else? Have you always been there?
I've always been here. Yeah. My family has been here since the Civil War, just after the Civil War. And it's pretty crazy, like I grew up going to some of the same restaurants that my grandparents went to when they were in high school. I went on dates to Henry Teeley, and they went on dates to Henry Teeley. It's pretty wild. Just seemed normal then, though.
So you decided to start your own band. Now, I read a terrible story. You were in a band, and the singer stole your girlfriend, and you got kicked out of the band. Is that true?
Yes. Two of the best, literally the single best two things anyone's ever done for me. So, but it didn't feel like it at the time.
Right. Because sometimes I know in my life it's taken major horrible events to push me in the right direction. So did that send you in the direction to putting together the Dandy Warhols?
Well, it made me available to do it. And Peter had moved back from New York, and was my roommate had not paid rent in a couple months. So I sold his furniture and paid myself his rent, and moved Pete in. And Portland was really cheap. It was like $175 a piece to have a really great long, narrow 2-bedroom apartment, wood floors, it was great. It was beautiful. And So it was fairly easy to move people in, and I could handle somebody owing me $350. Like I say, I was making what would have been considered very good money. I was also a vintage Volkswagen mechanic during the day, and then the strip club janitor part of my life was just any time in the middle of the night. I had the keys to the place. I would go. I would let myself in. Do the dirty deed. Take about 2 hours, and I would get paid $50. And that was minimum wage was about $3.50 an hour, and I was making 25. So yeah, it was cool. I had that beautiful place all to myself. Pete moved in, and then I have always had uh, home recording equipment, and I would always just make songs for myself, or just I liked the sounds. I didn't really write songs. I would have one line, and I would repeat it, every 30 seconds, like 3 times. But mostly I just like to make the chord changes and the melodies and things like that, and the harmonies and all the textures and cool wah 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 wah, and things that people weren't really doing at the time. So in the early '90s, Pete heard that, and having just lived in New York, and living down the street from 7B, which had the coolest jukebox maybe in the world at the time. It was the only jukebox that once we put the band together, within the next 2 or 3 years, we were out traveling the world, and we were going, wow, 7B did have the best jukebox in the world, uh, because it had Ride and Slint and Slow Dive and
Oh yeah.
Suicide and Spaceman 3, and it was absolutely stunning. And when we put out our first record, we were very flattered because 7B put it in the jukebox. So we felt super, super cool. Oh yeah, so he had the sick record collection. He also had pretty much every book ever published on Andy Warhol, and had like uh, Dee Dee Ramone had come to his birthday party, and um, Pete was a maybe the first stencil graffiti artist back in the end of the '80s, and there is and and nobody would ever know it, except that when the Family Guy won the lottery, he built a mansion. And in that mansion, he put an art gallery. And when he's showing people the art gallery, he walks down, and I haven't seen this, but my painter buddy, who's a big Family Guy fan, said, "You're not going to believe this," and told me this story. Family Guy goes, "This is a Matisse. This is a Picasso. This is some guy from New York City." And it's a Pete Holmstrom early layered stencil. I think he said it was one of his African sculpture head profiles. The super narrow neck, the huge jaw, chin, the real bulbous nose. That classic South African, kind of sculpture. Pete would do those in layers of textures and shapes, and he'd go out every night, and the previous night's stencil shapes would dry, and then he'd tape up the next one and do that. And so he'd get these layers of necklaces and and nose rings, and bands in the hair, and all these different silver and gold spray paint and different colors and eyes, and it was very cool stuff. And so my buddy rented the DVD back then, and got the commentary. And sure enough, he said, "Yeah, we went to RISD, and we'd go into the city on the weekends, and there was so much great graffiti, but there was this one dude." Or, well, he didn't know if it was a dude, but it was just somebody calling themselves Scrap, and they just nobody was doing anything like it. And we took a lot of pictures of it. So when we did Family Guy wins the lottery, we had to do an art gallery, because obviously we're obsessed with art and artists, and we thought it would be really cool to put him in there. and and we never found out who he is, or who it was, but later we were told that it was the guitarist for Marilyn Manson. Yeah,
Wow.
ouch.
When you were recruiting people for the Dandy Warhols, you wanted people who didn't play instruments, so they didn't bring musician bad habits with them. Is that true?
Bad musical habits. Yeah, yeah, uh, no, I didn't want anyone showing off for the point of showing off their chops, Everything had to be put on there because it feels like something, and so, Pete wasn't a band guy. He never, you know, I don't know, he probably played in, bands that played in their garage, and, that kind of thing. So he knew how to bar chords and he knew the folk chords, but he wasn't about to play a lead or anything. And I had been a drummer in all these bands since I was 14 or 15, and so I had picked up guitar on also a very similar, very basic level. So he heard the stuff and said, "Let's put a band together." Also because the white kids at the school that I was going to, the jazz college, there were very few, and I would go to their parties, and they tended to be uh, like operatic metal dorks, like Yngwie Malmsteen listeners and stuff like that. And Pete was not having it. He was not going to go to these parties and have to listen to this, this stuff that was so anathema to living in New York City. And Kim's, if you remember that, like Kim's Video had all the foreign art films, New York City films, and then Kim's record store had like all the coolest imports. So
Oh, yeah. Some of my friends worked there. That place is legendary.
yeah, yeah, so cool. Those were great times. But so Pete just one day he said, why don't we just make a band and we can play the stuff that you record for yourself in there, and that way we'll just start playing shows, and then we'll get to meet other people that listen to Galaxy 500 and T-Rex. And that's exactly what happened. We played a couple shows, and the last junkie, not if you're the last junkie on earth, my ex-girlfriend, that's about my ex-girlfriend. And
Right. She did heroin and liked it way too much
that's exactly correct.
and just got hooked right away, right?
That's what the singer of the band that stole my girlfriend said. And before he kicked me out of the band. But so she calls me up and goes, "Hey, my roommate is in a band. I'm roommating in this house, and one of the dudes is in a band, and uh, so and so there was something like, I think you'll like them. They want to play with you guys. They're boring too. People tell them they're boring too."
Oh my God.
Right, because we're not rap rock and we're not grunge, right? We're like, Mazzy Star or spiritualized, or that's what kind of where thought we were going. We wanted to be spiritualized and Mazzy Star. So yeah, and we met them and they sounded like Mazzy Star, kind of like Opal, Mazzy Star, that guy that put all those bands together and did such a great job. But yeah, they were just great, and they were called Swoon. And then we met a band that was more like Syd Barrett, and they were called Sugar Boom. And then we just became this 3-band thing. We went on van tours together, played all our shows together, and we're just best friends, for that whole formative era.
So if you're recruiting people who aren't necessarily seasoned musicians, I mean, what's the lead up time to the first show? Did you guys rehearse a lot? Did you guys have enough experience that you could kind of piece everything together and make it sound good?
Well, you just make it simple, It was 1, 2, 3, or 4 chords. That's what the songs are going to be. Some are going to be a 1-chord song, some are going to be 2 or 3 or 4, and you're not going to have to remember. They're just going to be cycles, and then we are either singing over it or somebody is playing some kind of or otherwise you change the sound and do something different over it. But it was just repetition and get the repetition and the groove on, just enough groove and melody or harmony or both to excuse getting your groove on for 4 minutes or 3 minutes, So that's what the point was just to make music that made you feel cool, that it was on. It made you feel your problems kind of went away a little bit. You feel cool. You feel like you're in the right place. That's what music I think should do. And even if you're alone, it should make you glad you're alone. So it wasn't that hard, and it worked really well. A lot of people really liked it, and just thought, God, this is great.
Yeah, because it was different from all the second and third wave grunge and rap rock and all that stuff that was happening. So I'm sure there was an appeal to that at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great. It led us to a lot of different social circles, and so we got to meet people that were probably a little bit more similar to our personalities or our aesthetics or our value systems or whatever. It was interesting that none of those parties we went to, we never showed up and they were playing Blue Train or anything. It was like they were just weird metal kids going out to the jazz college. I guess just because it had the reputation for being the badass music college, and some of those teachers were kind of mean,
How so?
Well, like I got told I would never be, Courtney, you're never going to be the N word. You know what I mean? Like, like, like shit, man, this is heavy. This is,
Because it's a jazz college?
yep. Yep.
And you'll never be able to play that type of music?
Yeah, exactly. But that was one of the coolest things I've ever been harassed by. That was awesome. Like, fuck, this is heavy, man. These guys are badass. And we would go, we weren't even 21, and we would go to see them play at these little jazz clubs, smoky, packed little jazz clubs, man. And just being these, me and my jazz buddy would put on our zoot suits. You could get zoot suits for $25 that were from the 40s at vintage stores back then. So we would just had David Bowie kind of 40s haircuts, and we didn't get hassled. Just two underage white kids in a all black jazz dive in Portland.
Those must have been great shows to go to.
Oh my God. We were just we just felt amazingly cool and real lucky to be there. It was great. And then we'd do something stupid like order Brandy Alexanders and big fluffy crazy drinks. What did they think? God, they just were idiots.
I did that once. It was like three of us, like really strung out on ecstasy, and we're like, let's go to the jazz club. And we're like, okay. And I only have a very fleeting memory of being there, but I remember it being really weird and really awesome.
Yeah, on a tail, is that like you're just coming down from a ecstasy day?
No, we were like really high.
Oh, you were in the middle of screaming high.
Yeah.
God, that would be wild. Wonder what I'd think about that. Yeah, I still go to jazz. We were just in Dallas, and there was a goth club that the music was just too harsh the night before. The EQ on the system was loud and shrill and tinny. It was a real shame. And we went back the next night to see if it was a better DJ or a better whatever. And it was a jazz night, and there were no white cats in there. And me and my light guy were like, awesome, man. We're going in there, dude. And it's just so cool to visit an entire culture. You're in there, the music, the people, the vibe, how they hang, and it was really, it's cool, and you know that somebody could get pissed off at any moment. Some psycho could get pissed off that you're there because you don't have the same color skin as everyone else here, and nobody has. No, knock on wooden head, nobody has, and that's rad. We went to Detroit last fall, and we were in uh, at my friend's house, whose band is touring with us. uh, Sean Morrow from Sisters of Your Sunshine Vapor, which is like if Shoegazer did a lot of LSD over the years, which I think is pretty much what happened. But he said, "Hey, you want to go to the oldest jazz bar in Detroit?" And we're like, "Fuck yeah, we do." And he goes, "Well, it's about a mile away. We could walk there, but..." And I'm like, "Isn't that 8 Mile?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah. I'm not walking a mile down 8 Mile." Like, God, dude, no, we're getting an Uber. And we get there, and wow, we sit down at the bar, and there must be 6 seats empty next to us at the bar. Every table is filled, though, right? And it is old Detroit jazz scene going on there. It was so heavy and cool. And then these absolute gorgeous, like, dreadlocked and afroed and cornrow, tattooed, nice dresses and cool style supermodels came in and sat next to us, just sat down. And finally one of them goes, "Man, you guys look super cool. Why don't we ever get more cool looking white boys in here?" And we kind of like, "Oh, cool." So we just started chatting with them, and then they introduced us to their friends that were there. And then the next thing you know, I'm talking to the drummer, who must be 70. And he has this awesome, like, gray afro from 1970. He's probably had since 1970. And I said, "Man, those are the best sounding hi-hats I've ever heard in my life." And he said, "Buddy Rich gave me these in 1972.
Wow.
I just was like, "Fuck, this is cool." And I get back so I chat with that guy a little bit, and then I get back to the bar, and I'm like, "Where's Chris?" Because I had gone with our monitor engineer. And Sean goes, "Oh, uh, he's fixing the keyboard player's monitor mix. He's on stage right now fixing the keyboard player's monitor mix." And it was just like a movie, where you just like, you go in there and you're nervous, man. It's nerve-wracking, but I'm not gonna not have this in my life, where I can go to a jazz club and just feel that and hear that, those cats playing like that. And then the next thing you know, like, we're just friends with all these awesome people there. And yeah, that was a really, really unforgettable recent night.
Yeah, if you're respectful and cool and know how to carry yourself, you'll be fine. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah, boy, don't you wish everybody could not be a dick?
I really do.
I wish everybody could don't be a dick. I wish I could don't be a dick, really.
Look, we all have our moments. It's just important not to be a dick all the time.
Yeah, anytime you can help it.
So we know the Dandies ended up on Capitol Records. Now, what happened? Did you record what would end up being the Black Album and they said, "No, there's no singles. Give us something else"?
Well, we just didn't know how to finish a record, and that was it. It wasn't like we didn't, like, we were not patting each other on the back and going, "We did it this time. Oh, they're gonna lose their mind." No, we were like going, "This is not. I don't know. I can't do." We had never had unlimited budget, like, we were recording. We had always borrowed equipment and then made our records in my bedroom, and and then gone into and spent the money, but only part of the money on mixing at a real studio, with an SSL board and recall and all that shit, and the amazing rack mount, digital effects processors and all that cool stuff. So we would do that, but we would do it from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., right? So we could get a deal on the thing. And that's how we made, all of our recordings that we had done up until that point. So you got to get their mics back to, your friends that you borrowed like a $11,000 microphone from, and the digital tape 8-track recorder and the mini Mackie mixing board or the Ghost board or whatever, all this shit that was piled into my room to record. So now we've got a huge budget. We've got a friend's world-class studio down the street from our apartment, and he's doing it for a real affordable rate. And we have all the friends who can play tweaky instruments and know anywhere from great to absolutely horrible drug dealers. And we got to experiment and say, we're going to do 3 days on speed and see how that goes. And, and then like, okay, we're not doing any uppers. We're only doing downers. And then, it was like that kind of a thing. We're in here to do pure research. And then at some point, we're just depressed, we're malnourished, it's not working. And so we turned in what we had and asked the label to find us somebody to help us finish it. So they went to a lot of really, really, Roth rock, all sorts of different people that were hot shit at the time. I think, the Dust Brothers, the producers before Nigel Godrich that did Radiohead. I mean, some really outstanding, visionary producers to help us finish this record, and none of them wanted to do it. So, we kind of, Love and Rockets wanted us to go on tour with them. So, or no, it's Echo and the Bunnymen kind of thing. Whatever the project of those guys without the bass player, maybe. So we went on tour with them, and then Love and Rockets showed up at the last show and met us and said, "Oh, we love your band. We want you to go on tour." So then we went on tour with them. Then Spiritualized was on tour, wanted us to tour. Then the Charlatans, and then Blur. And so months and months later, we had spent enough time jamming at sound checks and stuff, and really working stuff out. So we went back in with our first producer, Tony Lash, who had done, Elliott Smith's bands and all that stuff. And he was just a real square guy. He was a brilliant engineer, amazing guy that gets great sounds and has a great sound. And he's just hard ass, super hard ass, organized dude. And we did it. We just started from scratch and did the record, straight through, and really did it.
Oh yeah. With great results, right?
Yeah. And we found Chad Blake to mix with, who is, other great mixers would argue that he's the greatest mixer because he's such a weird feel guy, and he's got the chops, super big time chops, but he doesn't, that never gets in the way. It's not even a consideration. And I've always wondered about him because he is one of the coolest, cleanest souls I've ever encountered. There is no guile, pretension, insecurity. There's seems to be no emotional baggage in Chad Blake. And having that always in mind, it was not that surprising when one day when he was working at Peter Gabriel's studio out in the middle of nowhere, England, he turned around and goes, "Courtney, are you too young to have experienced Quaaludes?" I said, "Yeah, no, I've never even seen one. That was something that the older generation, the older kids, And he goes, yeah, that was a great drug, man. He goes, I did a quarter hit of acid every day before going to high school, And he went to Hollywood High, by the way. And I just thought, oh, that's it, right? The psychiatrists, crutch. LSD was a great unlearning tool for emotional baggage, right? That's what it was kind of used for and apparently invented for. I find pot does the same thing for just neural bad habits, like having a negative bias predisposition to anything is a knee-jerk reaction. Pot I find is pretty good for that. But yeah, LSD is a big boy. But that made a lot of sense for why Chad is and why he's so adaptable and he hears music as music. I don't think he hears it as, oh, this is kind of goth or this is kind of, you know, proto grunge or this is this or this is that. I think he just, I don't know, he probably hears it as like shapes and colors or something, for all I know. But
Yeah, the LSD thing I think was a more 70s, 80s opening up thing, and then in the 90s and 2000s ecstasy was a huge thing that I got into,
absolutely, yeah.
and then I went down a very dark path and got addicted to many things and had to eventually stop all of it. And Courtney, it sounds like you've experimented a bit yourself over the years, and there is a lot of drug references in the songs.
Yeah.
Where are you at with it? Did you ever really struggle? Did you ever have to pull yourself out of something or cut back or
Oh, no, 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 no. None of us really did that. I think now this age is probably, when you get the kids out of the house and you're whoa, I'm free again. That's a scarier time where you could probably develop more problems than when you're obsessed with like making music and you know getting into a van or a tour bus or whatever, seeing the world, going to places you've never been, that there was no way we were going to let drugs and shit, partying and all that shit get in the way of this. No fucking way, dude. And now I feel like I'm a lot more vulnerable to it. I've just basically reduced my favorite trips to like I realized I don't even like caffeine. I don't like that drug. It's like it's like it's the same as really bad Coke. It's not like cocaine is in South America, right? Where it's just like, it was a plant 4 days ago. It's like the cleanest espresso. It's what you want espresso to be, that's what like, that kind of pure stuff is. But I don't do that. I don't care to do that anymore. I don't really care about anything. I like weed and I like old French wine. That is when I polished off 3/4 of a bottle of 15-year-old Bordeaux at a dinner one night. I just went, "Oh my god, I wasted so much money." And you remember ecstasy was like $60 a hit in the '90s, and I wasted it. Never delivered for me. It never did. And some were too strong, some weren't strong enough. Some were, yeah, it's pretty good, but I hate these waves that come, oh, fuck, now I'm an idiot, and okay, I gotta wait 7 minutes and try to finish this amazing conversation I was having. It never did it for me. Old French wine, perfectly aged, great French wine. Oh my god, this is ecstasy. Oh my god. It's hopeful, but it's wistful, it's romantic, but it's and you don't get the bravado or the braggart of whiskey or I mean, and it's not the sluggish, you get the steel wolf fog in your head of tequila, which is kind of nice, but nah, not for me. That is my drug. Is that wine and weed are just absolutely, and now weed is legal in many places, and so they've really refined what the high is and what you're looking for, and it's still a lot of bullshit talk. You go into a bud tender and they
I hate that.
oh yeah, right. Yeah, any kind of pious false piety just it does grind me the wrong way, but that's why you want weed, so you can learn to be a more accepting person. Yeah, how about this one? How's everything tasting? When restaurants about 7 years ago just started forcing their wait staff to not say, "Okay, how you guys got everything? How's it? How is it? How is it?" You can't say that. You gotta say, "Okay, how's everything tasting?"
I
And
don't think I've heard that one yet, thankfully.
oh, really? How could you not? For
Well,
God's
you probably
sake.
eat in actual restaurants. I don't do that too often.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah, I do. Once you realize how much you can write off, uh, you know, you just you just go to restaurants with people that are more or less in the same industry you are.
Right.
Yeah. Half price, everything's half price, you know?
I love it.
Discuss arrange a business thing and everything, but anyway, so yeah, that's my pet peeve.
You have performed and toured with David Bowie, correct?
Yeah, we probably played 30 to 40 shows. We were his I was his little buddy, you know. He was really, really into whatever the hell it was about us that worked for him, you know. So we would work in the studio with him, or he would just let us borrow the studio. You know, he and Philip Glass had this place in Midtown for years and years. And so we were there, you know, fairly regularly, and you know, we'd hang out. He'd come to all our shows when we were in New York, and yeah, it was great. It was amazing being buddies with Bowie for a few years. That was really special.
Yeah, because you mentioned, hearing Ziggy Stardust and the effect it had on you. So to then befriend and perform and tour with David Bowie, pretty mind blowing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't at the time, just because David was in a slump. Um, so, you know, we would play with the Stones and be in a 110,000 stadium, and then, you know, we'd play with David and he'd be in a 15,000 stadium. And you know, David was he was a he was it burned him, you know, that he was really like, you know, grumpy about that. And and it was so it was a learning experience about, you know, time and ego and vanity and all that kind of stuff. I definitely learned a lot from him. But mostly just like, God, you can just, you know, you can be 60 and just look great and dress cool and just still be awesome. And that's kind of and and be frustrated and bummed that you're not bigger when you're making millions and millions and touring in stadiums, you know, and that's crazy. So that was in many, 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 many ways, that was a great learning time for us and experience.
It just goes to show that we're all just people with the same insecurities, right? Like I've heard stories about Robin Williams being really self-conscious about other comedians like Jim Carrey and stuff, and like and feeling weird when he blows up and maybe Robin isn't doing as well. So it's wild to hear that even David Bowie has experienced some of that.
Yeah, he was not resting on his laurels for a second, or, you know, any of that kind of thing. Yeah, Robin Williams. I have a friend who, at a Halloween show at the Fillmore, um, some dude, because my buddy is kind of big and I think he was probably a wrestler in high school or college, and some big guy, short but stocky guy in a gorilla costume just came up at the gig and just started wrestling with him, like, kinda serious. And John was like, John just said he said I was like, "God," he got serious, and I was like, "Shit, does this guy really wanna get serious? Okay, he's not hitting me or anything, he must really wanna wrestle." And so we just went at it in full costumes, just went at, like, full on Greco-Roman or whatever, just, you know, throws and pins and throwdowns, and people are kind of getting weird, obviously freaking out around them. And then, the other dude gets up and puts his hand up and goes, and he kind of leans over. He's huffing. They're both huffing and breathing. And he goes, gotta wait, gotta wait. Thanks, man. And he takes his hat off, and of course his head off, and of course it's Robin Williams. And he goes, come on, I gotta get you a drink. We gotta drink. And he goes, great. So we hung out and had a drink with Robin, and then, dude disappeared back into the crowd. And so yeah, that's what I know about Robin Williams. Dude needed some fun.
The Dig documentary you did with Brian Jonestown Massacre. Now, I've read that the documentary kind of pits you against each other and creates this rivalry, but that wasn't the case in real life. Is that true?
Yeah, we didn't know that we were supposed to be rivals, but we were busy and we were becoming internationally successful. So I did see some of the raw footage, a lot of it, and also experienced, being woken up at 10 in the morning after going to bed, going to sleep at 8 in the morning, coked out of my head, and 10 hours of drinking, whiskey and cokes or whatever. And like, hey, I got the label on the line. You got to ask them why, and that kind of thing. And so that's how the movie was made. And it's all negativity, right? There are no intelligent conversations, or there's no fun that isn't, like drug joy of like, yeah, we scored drugs, it's pretty, it is a wholly negative take on us. In the final edit, she did get a guy who edited the Jerry Springer show, and he told her, I know how to do this, so she kind of got pulled into that, the lowest form of entertainment in Hollywood, but it worked. Unfortunately, I knew how it happened, and it was a lot of that, getting in the van with the Jonestown, who are, strung out, hungover, grumpy. Hey guys, what's going on? Yeah, heard from the Dandies? Heard they're on tour with Bowie. Yeah, or whatever, I don't think it was Bowie that early in, but, and they would just get shitty and get grumpy and "You fuck those guys." And so that's kinda how that went down, and we saw or Zia had read in the Rolling Stone that, this unknown band in San Francisco, or I guess they had moved to Hollywood at that point, uh but they were the rival band of the Dandy Warhols. And Joel, who actually is the single genius of Dig, he is funny and amazing the whole time, but back then he was a really, really, like, carrying the flag of anger and jealousy about us. So he was, shit mouthing us, apparently, Zia had said. So she just called him, like, really? Is that really how you feel? Like, we're not gonna do that. We just won't hang out with you or talk to you anymore. Like, go ahead, be this band we used to know that badmouths us so that you can get into the a magazine, you know? And he, no, we're just playing up the rivalry thing. And she's like, what fucking rivalry thing? Andi, that's what she's gonna make the movie about now. And so that was kind of probably about when we stopped letting her film us. And then, of course, that's what the movie was about. And it's hard to call it, when I hear people call it a documentary, it's always a documentary, but it's a lot of, or a lot of riffing, and it's not very, it's just not a documentary. And it's too bad. But it did make rock documentaries an incredibly huge market. I mean, everybody within 10 years of that, there must have been thousands of rock documentaries, whereas before it was, no one will ever see this. It doesn't matter. Let her shoot whatever. Just sign the thing and let her do it. No one's ever going to see this. Nobody watches rock documentaries.
Did you ever talk to her again and say, like, what's the deal? Why are you doing this, or anything like that?
Cannot be talked to. Conversations, or yeah, are a one-way street. It's not worth it to even try. And there's nothing to be said. The damage is done. The disappointment is done. we'll never have a movie about what it was like back then for us, and how amazing it was to find these other bands that, um, we all really liked each other's music a lot, and we tolerated each other's personalities, just to have, community, have a tribe.
I read a quote from you in an older publication, and you said the Dandies were the only good band on a major label in 1997. Now, I went back and looked at the Billboard Top 100 in 1997, and I think you're right.
Oh my
because
God.
I was young at the time. I was in high school, so it felt like there was a lot of cool things going on. But when I look at the top 100 songs at that time, it's pretty abysmal.
Oh, Joe Strummer in probably 99, uh, you know, said to me, "Courtney, mate, I was the singer in the coolest band in the world. Now you're the singer in the coolest band in the world. How the fuck does that feel, mate?" And I looked at him, and frustrating. That was how I felt about it.
Why frustrating?
Because we were nowhere to be found or heard of in, whatever was big then, Spin, Rolling Stone, nothing. But NSYNC, or one of those pop boy bands, and it said the greatest band on earth on the cover of Rolling Stone. And it hurt my ego to have accomplished what we set out to accomplish, which was to just have a, a group of people across the world that would come to see us because they appreciated and felt that we were great artists, right? We accomplished that, and by then we're in the industry, and I'm feeling my ego, uh, wanting to get into the velvet rope, get past the velvet rope, and yeah, that was a hurdle. And also back to the Bowie thing. He was David fucking Bowie, dude, and he was frustrated that he didn't have hits and wasn't on the cover of Rolling Stone, unless it was the 20th anniversary of something he had done.
Right, right. It's got to be tough to be at the very top and then not, because mainstream music or whatever music is most popular changes so much, and who can decide what it is? I mean, there's been a million things over the years: grunge, new metal, pop, rap. I mean, it just depends.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a huge part of why, I never moved anywhere. I would find myself losing touch with my values, my actual values that I knew were my actual values. And I did have a hard time when I was working with Chad mixing Come Down, because we were mixing in Hollywood. Now, he had grown up in Hollywood, so he was completely immune to it. And but I started finding that feeling of at night we'd be done, I would go out, meet people, and I wanted in that damn velvet rope. I wanted in there. I wanted to just be able to breeze in and out of every club. And during the mixing, I had to go home for a week. I just felt like I started to become a psycho. What I felt was a truly psychotic person with really fucked up values. And I said, I can't make decisions anymore in the studio. I can feel myself losing my my ideals. I need to go home and hang out with my friends, and listen to real music and be around real people. And what I thought were that, who does say everyone's on a real person, and so I did, and went back down and finished mixing Come Down, and really, being able to stay on target. And there was a band called Gwen Mars, and I was staying at the bass player's house. They had a extra guest room, and they also were pretty cool, but they were slick, and I think they lost out because of the slickness. It kind of put their cool band into a different. It made it compete on a different level, and either it couldn't hold up, or it didn't hold up, or it didn't get the push, or it didn't get understood, or whatever. Whereas when you get back and you go, God, going inside the velvet rope, you're going to just be with a bunch of people that wanted to get inside the velvet rope so badly that they left their family, their friends, their homes, and moved to Hollywood to get inside that, and devoted their entire life, every second of their life, to getting inside that velvet rope, not just casually because you're mixing in Hollywood and you just kind of are horny and want to get in there and want to be around famous people or whatever. So I did ultimately find that I preferred to just be, I would prefer to be understood by a group of people globally than to be perceived as like a celebrity by anonymous people that I would not even want to talk to, or would be frustrated trying to talk to them. And it worked. It did. We did, by controlling what our output was, controlling every bit of art, imagery, videos, music, sounds, all that. We have found our people for a long time.
Did you get in the Velvet Rope? From my perspective, you did, because it's a huge band, hit singles, all that stuff. But did you ever get inside and see it and experience it and decide, I like this or I don't
Oh
like
God.
this?
Oh yeah. We definitely spent a lot of time around A-listers, but we didn't really do it in the velvet ropey kind of places. It was all the only the cool kids knew about it dive bars where you're hanging out with, I don't know, like Blur. The guitar player from Blur and Keith Richards are there, and I end up sitting, next to Oliver Stone and getting hammered and talking about JFK and Bobby Kennedy, and there's supermodels hanging out, and but only the rock and roll ones.
That's the way. That is the way.
Yeah, that's a lot better than the but that's New York. That's like the New York A-lister scene rather than the Hollywood A-lister.
Yeah, I love New York City and I'll probably never leave, but a lot of people here think they're a big deal who are not. And I'm from Philly originally, and I always say, like, if these people tried this in Philly, they would get their asses kicked very quickly.
Philly, Philly. What is Philadelphia? What is Philly? God, that has got to be one of the most bizarre cities. Like, it's so close to New York that it should be fabulous and bursting, and it almost wants to be. And nope.
Hey, we've got character.
Do you?
Sure.
God, I can't. What is the character? I've never found any defining terms for Philadelphia or Philadelphians.
Well, it's got a bad rap, but it's got an amazing music scene. That's where I really discovered things.
I don't know that it has a bad rap. I've never even heard it have a bad or good rap. I don't know. I've played there a lot. We have a good time. We always find there's always cool people everywhere. But the city itself is such an in-between place that I can't quite put my finger on what it is. You produce great sports teams, you could produce great bands, but
We've also got one of the best drug neighborhoods in the world.
okay. You produce a great drug neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you have to be from there to understand. I like to refer to it as New York's angry, drunk younger brother.
Oh, okay.
They wouldn't like that if they heard me say that, but that's how I like to describe it.
Really? I can see that. I can see that. Yeah, it's not as angry as Boston, but there's a chip on the shoulderiness going on there. As angry is a little too far, I would say, but disgruntled little brother, drunk little brother.
The Dandies have a new single out. I'd like to help you with your problem. Now we have Slash on this, right?
Yeah.
And the video is all AI?
Yep.
How was this conceived? How was this put together, the video?
Well, our filmmaker, uh, Justin, who we've been working for, I don't know, since like the early 2000s. He did all the Monkey House videos with me. So he shot us. We were just going to put together a video for Summer of Hate. And so he shot us on the green screen. We were going to do basically the same style as Blur's video for Boys and Girls. And then he came, so we shot us on the green screen. And then he called me up and he said, "Hey, I have a buddy who does AI, and he has absolutely the newest program. It just came out last week, and he has just been doing nothing but like 18-hour days of tweaking on it, and he thinks he can do this." So I said, I said, "Just send me some stuff," and it, of course, it was like, "What the fudge?" And so I said, "Yeah, hire him. Figure out a price, give us a good deal. We're just doing it ourselves. We're not on a label yet or anything." So he did, and he just said, "Give me a bunch of prompts," and I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?" And so, I told him kind of what I thought might be a good idea, what I like, and then of course AI just, I mean, I don't know what it does. It scans the internet, you know. So it had an idea of what the Dandy Warhols were, and then it spits out all this stuff, and J Lo that's his, we call it Justin Lowe, J Lo. J Lo said he had gone over there a couple times to Andy's house and watched him do it, and he says it's like, I mean, he's typing as fast as he can. It's like he's writing War and Peace and trying to do it in a night. He's trying to, narrow the field and get this out of it, and da 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 da. But it can't be controlled. It can only be kind of steered in the way you can steer a canoe or a raft on a river. It's you're not keeping it between the lines. It's going all over, but it'll go the direction you want it to go. So you do that, and then J-Lo and he would come with all this with a rough cut, and then we start finding the cut. I don't want that. I don't like that kind of imagery. Let's get rid of that stuff. Let's remove this whole style right here and just leave it this style and this style. And then, okay, can you show me anything like this, but slower, longer? And, and you do that, and you then take and create your world out of what it has spat out. And it is a confetti cannon. Even when you're controlling it and trying to keep it focused, it is still a mess. And also, if you go back and try to coerce it into doing this or that a little more, it'll behave like a insolent child, and it will start putting, if you push it too much or contradict yourself too much, it'll start putting fucked up shit on purpose and fuck your project up. It is there. So it is truly frightening. But so that was that. And then I just wanted a psychedelic oil light show for the next single when we were on a label. And so that was its own weird mess. We pulled some original 60s oil light show off of a public domain website. And then once it showed up online, I guess somebody went in and pulled it off the public domain website and tried to hit our label up to pay for it. So we just, obviously they're not going to pay cough up, any kind of extorted shit. So, we just pulled it down after it already gotten, 60,000 views or something. And then we just filmed some clouds, put those on there. Now it's clouds. And so that was that single. But then this one, I saw J-Lo had shown me the newest again, and it's only 3 months later. And look at the video for Summer of Hate and compare it to Help You With Your Problem. It is insane how far it advanced in 3 months, maybe 4 months. Uh, yeah, crazy. And so what are we gonna do? I don't know. And J-Lo said, because he grew up in just outside Coos Bay, Oregon, and he said, "You know the whale when they blew up the whale?" And I go, "Yeah, I remember that. This giant whale beached uh, on the shore down there, and they couldn't move it. They couldn't bulldozers. Nothing could move it, and they didn't want to just float it back in the ocean anyway. So they blew it up. Somebody said that's a good idea. Dynamite the thing and just blow it to dust." Well, it's a funny. You can look it up on YouTube because the news thing is there, and uh, an ex Marine or something who that was his thing was explosives. He was one of the like top notch explosives expert probably on Earth at the time. Came by, saw what was going on, and went, "What are you guys doing? That's not enough." He go, "Yeah, you stay back. You stay back." He goes, "Dude, this is what I do." I'm like, "Dude, I'm the man." And they're like, "Please, sir, just stand back. That's probably fine right there." And he goes, "That's not enough dynamite, dude. You're not blowing it to dust. You're gonna blow it into huge chunks." And sure enough, and he was driving apparently a brand new Cadillac that he had just driven off the lot and was driving it home. Saw what was going on, pulled over. A VW Bug sized chunk crushed his brand new Cadillac.
Oh no.
He was totally right. They flubbed it. They screwed the pooch on it. Da, 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 da. But anyway, so he wanted to make it about this other thing that happened down there outside Coos Bay or in Coos Bay when he was a kid. Well, I guess this is only 25 years ago now. But an oil tanker did the same thing, washed up on the shore, and they couldn't get it moved. And so they did all sorts of stupid shit. Like, well, we better try to burn all the oil out of it before it starts leaking. Right? That was the logic of one.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah, and then like, okay, we're just gonna have to blow it up, and they did, right. So that was and being stoners, of course, we're like, oh god, that's so. What if? Well, can you imagine if that happened now? First, there'd be like a big protest, and then that protest would become a festival, become like a music festival, and then it would become like an international festival brand. And you could get tickets online, and of course we went down that whole rabbit hole, and then that's what we did for the video, was just that idea. And the ship was called the New Carissa.
It reminded me of The Road, when he's like out on the beach and swims out to that ship that's stuck in the water to see if anything's out there. I like it.
Oh, I never saw it.
Highly recommended.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Highly recommended book and movie. The book is way more grim than the movie, but both are great. Check it out. Viggo Mortensen. You can't go wrong with him.
Yeah, I watch Lord of the Rings every year.
Me too. Well, usually when I'm sick, like when I had COVID, I was stuck in bed for like 4 days. So if you watch the extended edition,
I do.
Of all three,
I do.
That's like 2 days right there.
Yep. We watch after Christmas every year in January. The tree is now chopped, all this, and put and hauled away in the recycling and the compost, and all the decorations are put back, life's back to normal. We watch one disc every night for 6 nights in a row, and we've done that for 15 years.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. We can recite it and all that stuff.
It's a nice tradition.
It is, although I'm finding that it's getting grueling because, it's like poor Frodo. It just suffer along with him for, a year in Middle Earth time.
You know what the most heartbreaking part is, which I didn't really comprehend until recently? He's so fucked up after that whole experience. He has to go off on the boat with Gandalf and Bilbo.
He can't live around his peers.
Yeah.
That's how we felt when we got home from tours at first. We would get home And oh no, I just realized I still feel that way. You get home and you don't know what to talk about with these. You're not interested. You sit there at the bar like Frodo, where you're just there talking and laughing and having a good time and getting all wound up, and you're kind of looking out the window, sipping your Chardonnay, way too cold Chardonnay. And yeah, that's I can definitely understand that.
Now, that's a great comparison because that's exactly how I felt. The first tour I was on was like 2 months across the US.
Wow.
And when I came home, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, what do I do? Nothing feels the same. I'm home with my parents again. It sucks.
Yeah, what was that band called?
This day forward, I was their merch guy. So I sold merch for them. That was way back in like 2002.
Nice. Yeah, that first tour we did with the Echo and the Bunnymen band, Will Sargent and Ian McCullough, and I think their drummer had a different name. I can't remember, but there was also a middle band called Echo Belly from England. Oh, it was Electrofiction, Echo Belly, and the Dandy Warhols, and they had this really cool kid doing merch, selling merch for them. And that would have been 96, I believe, that we did that tour. And we'll be having dinner with him in Denver on this tour. We've stayed at his house. We've stayed at his house in Amsterdam countless times. We have partied and hung out in more cities than I can count around the world. Yeah, amazing. To do merch for bands on tour when you're young just seems like the coolest thing in the world.
It's the best thing I ever did because I was young. I didn't have the opportunity to get into a band yet, which was my dream. But this allowed me to be out with my friends and experience it and help them out and, just be part of things, which are memories I still look back on very fondly.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, different city every day or two and just meeting different people every day and then having the same, roaming tribe you're just together with. God. Yeah. It's
Are you
cool.
happy? Are you happy with everything? I mean, you've done it all. Mainstream success, a great discography of awesome music. You're still doing it. You're still playing. You've got another great tour coming up, which
Well,
is
we have like 5 tours coming up. And that's too many, We've been very, woohoo about going on tour. You know, like Zia said a few months ago, she was like, "Pete, we don't go on tour to make money. We go on tour because our lives would suck without it." And that's pretty much it. We for years now we've just had this that's just a vacation that we don't have to pay for. And it's better because we have a tour manager to organize us and make sure everything goes smoothly. We have crew who are our best friends. We've had the same crew, uh, most of them since maybe the late '90s, and everything's organized and it's awesome. And so now, and every 4 months, you're just itching to go somewhere. You're like, oh right, we got a tour coming up in 3 weeks. Fun. And you go out for 9 days or 12 days or something, or 7 or 5, really. It can be anything. Whatever. But this time we decide, well, let's really do it, let's really do it. Like, we're getting the band back together. We're going on tours. We're creating content. We're going to work. We're going to do real work. And it's awful. It's absolutely horrible to be force-fed your own passion or your own interests to the point of it's a job, because we all have other things we do. I own a wine bar. I own an event space. And, like, we all do other things that we like. I've designed, remodeled tens of thousands of square feet of buildings. And, like, this is like all year. I'm gonna be confused, nervous. I'm gonna fuck things up. I'm gonna forget things that I'm supposed to do. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm just gonna not be able to do what I want when I want, and to an extent that I've never experienced since I graduated from high school. So I don't know. I mean, I told the band the other day, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not releasing a record again. No way. And they're kind of chuckling, and then like, okay, he's not kidding. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe in 4 years I will forget how bad this sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when you're in the grind, it's hard. Because I experienced that too with this platform. You got to make content. There's 4 different social media platforms. You got to make stuff. You got to record stuff. You got to edit stuff. And I'm sure you're doing that on an even bigger scale with your band because there's all these social media platforms and all these things to do now. So it's just.
And a different single every month, while we're trying to practice and be able to make these songs live be as transcendent as all these songs we've been playing for 20 years or more. And so it's Jesus Christ, man. I mean, we're all pretty bright, high IQ, very capable doers. We do, or all doing, kind of people. And this is absolutely, it's crushing me. And I know I said something about once we got I'll Never Stop Loving You. Once we got that to start working, I said, God, I'm going to wake up with less of a knot in my stomach. And Zia goes, you can wake up with less of a knot in your stomach? And I went, oh God, it's doing it to you too. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if we'll ever really try to push a record this hard again and really, be the business people anymore. I think this is it. I think it'll be back to like we do exactly what we want when we want. And and that obviously in the studio, it's our studio. It's all we've always ever since after Come Down was the last time we had to do it in my bedroom. After that, we built studios every time. We got a budget and ran a space for a year, kind of build a year studio and, move the gear in. So, so we're comfortable in the studio. This is really easy and part of second nature to us. But yeah, the work part is definitely not.
That's not the most fun part.
No. Though I'm not talking about the 5 30-second long clips that you made. I'm talking about the 11 15-second clips that you need to start making. That's what. Okay. So can we just talk about that right now? Okay. All right, cool. I'm just referring to that. Okay.
So let's recap. The tour kicks off this Sunday. We've got dates in North America and Australia. So we want people to go see you, right?
Yes. This is North America coming up for a couple weeks, then a month off, then Australia for a couple weeks, then a month off, then somewhere else for a couple weeks, then a month off, then somewhere else for a couple weeks, then 2 months off for summer, and then somewhere else, and then a month off, and then somewhere else. And then I think that's the end of the year.
And we've got 2 new singles that came out so far this year. Danzig with Myself, and I'd Like to Help You with Your Problem. So we can check those out and maybe a new album in like 4 years when you forget about how hard all of this is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
How much the business end sucks.
And you have a wine bar, the Old Portland.
Yeah. It's really cool.
So go check that out if you're in Portland. I mean, why not?
Yep. Zia does all the playlisting in there. She's the coolest DJ in the world. And it's just a worn in, it gets a lot of reviews. Like, this reminds me of Paris in the 80s. And somebody said it's New York, Soho in the 90s. And I just made it to look like old Portland, kind of what old bars or kind of bum, really old bars where people would move in and, make it a cool bar for 6 months. They'd get a cheap lease for 6 months before somebody sold the building. It's like that kind of thing, except it's permanent.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, if you're at the helm, I mean, it has to have a cool vibe. You've got good aesthetics. You've got good sound in your band. I trust you, Courtney. I trust your taste.
Thanks. Cool.
Of course.
I'm going to try to not let you down, man.
Well, Courtney, I've been listening to you for a long time. I love the band. I love everything you're doing. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. And I'm glad you dig our stuff enough to take your time to do it.
And there you have it. Courtney Taylor-Taylor. Excellent, excellent conversation. Really excited that I had the opportunity to have Courtney on the show, because it's always exciting for me to have more mainstream bands on the show who aren't exactly in this world of punk and hardcore and post whatever, right? It's exciting to get a look into that world. And Courtney was just so nice and so cool and so engaging, and hearing all of his stories about the band and just his attitude about everything. He's got a good head on his shoulders. You know how he talked about always staying in his hometown and always staying connected and not getting sucked into that whole world of chasing fame or going down the rabbit hole of drug addiction. He's avoided all that. I thought the one of the most interesting parts of the conversation was when he was talking about, just running and chasing your whole life to get behind that velvet rope. And, you push family aside and you push friends aside just to get there. And, it just ends up being nothing. It ends up being empty. And I like his approach to that, just talking to people that he relates to within that world. There's a cool dive bar that people know about, and they go there, and, you talk to the models that are into rock and roll, and you talk to Oliver Stone about JFK. I like that. And I can relate because, it's just like sometimes I feel like that. I'm chasing my pursuits, and I want to get everything that I want to get all of these things, and I want to accomplish everything, and I want to reach this place in my mind that I think is going to make me happy. And it's not. I mean, it's good to have artistic pursuits. It's good to create things. It's good to put those things out in the world, but they're not going to save you. They're not going to save you. Ultimately, what it comes down to is your friends and your family. I've had the same best friends I've had since I'm 16 years old, and family is family. And that's it. But the Dandy Warhols are a great band. They're continuing to do great things. I remember them going back a long time. I remember seeing Boys Better, that video, when it was on MTV. And I remember digging it then. I remember hearing Bohemian Like You everywhere. And never did I imagine that I would be hosting a podcast and have the opportunity to have an awesome conversation with Courtney. So great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you, Courtney, for coming on the show. So let's check in, huh? How are we doing? I did not have a great week, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, I have to tell you about the gig I went to last week. As you may know, Glassing just did a tour with Author and Punisher and Mourn. And I caught that last weekend in Brooklyn, last Sunday night. And that was an awesome show to go to. Glassing I haven't seen for a long time, and they are a fantastic band. I had a chance to hear their upcoming album, and I think it's their best yet. So you have that to look forward to. And they're just a force to be reckoned with live. They've gotten better and better since the first time I've seen them, way back in 2019. Go see them if you have the chance. Definitely check out the new record when it comes out. The record is called From the Other Side of the Mirror, and it comes out April 26th. But I got a chance to say hi to Corey and catch up with him for a minute. That was awesome. Mourn played after Glassing. That was my first time seeing them. They were good. And Author and Punisher. I mean, come on, it's Author and Punisher. A force to be reckoned with. My friend Doug, who I've known since I'm 16 years old, he was in A Life Once Lost. He currently plays in Ecstatic Vision. He is the live guitarist for Author and Punisher now and adds a lot to the live show. Great stuff. Great stuff. Crawler, their latest, is my favorite record by them. And they opened with the first track from that. That's my favorite song. Always great to see Author and Punisher. And it was a great show, too, because there was just a lot of people there I knew. It was like the old days. I was there talking to Doug, talking to Corey from Glassing. I saw Chris Enriquez there. We were talking for a little while. My friend Dion was there at the show. It was like going to a show when I was 17 and you would know 50 people there, right? It was awesome. It was awesome. It felt good to be surrounded by friends and to see awesome music. And this past week was tough. I was just stressed out. The stress is getting to me a bit. Not to the point where I'm in trouble or anything, but you know, I made a couple mistakes at my day job and then I was stressing out about that. There's a lot of high pressure interviews for the show and there's a lot of them to do every week, which means a lot of preparation, a lot of research, and a lot of nerves. Because wait till you see the shows that we have coming up. You're going to be surprised. I'm still surprised. So there's a lot of pressure associated with that. And I don't know, when when the pressure gets to me, I just get into a bad headspace. My stomach hurts all day. I'm not eating enough. I'm stressed out. I think I'm not taking care of things. And then when I get into that territory, I don't know, my mind starts playing tricks on me, telling me that you suck. You're not good enough at this. Nobody likes you. I have that internal voice in my head a lot of the time. And that's something that I need to do a lot of work to quiet because it's not good. It's not good. So there was a lot of that during the week, but I managed to get out. And you guys know I'm involved in recovery. So I went to some meetings. I went out to eat with some friends. And that helps get me out of that negative mindset. And I had the opportunity to speak this week and do some service. I will be helping out some people. I am being helped, getting myself out of thinking about me all of the time is a great way to quiet that negative internal voice, to help other people. And when I'm helping other people, I'm thinking less about me, and that's where I want to be. But now it's Saturday. As I sit here and record this, and I feel a lot better. I got up early this morning. I cleaned my whole apartment. I'm talking mopping floors, wiping walls, on my hands and knees, scrubbing things. I don't do that too often. It's not a dump in here, but I don't do a deep clean too often. But at some point, the floors get too dusty and things reach a point where even I can't stand it anymore. So I got up early. I did the deep clean. In a couple hours, I have band practice. Oh, that's another thing that's been getting to me is the band. That's a stress I completely forgot about until right now. We're working to record this record, and I'm on somewhat of a timeline. It's not set in stone, but I want to make sure it's recorded by a certain point, and we're working hard to finish up the last new song we wrote and get back into the studio in a couple weeks and finish recording this thing. So that's a lot of pressure too. Fun. Cannot wait for you all to hear this band. But pressure. But I have to remember that these are good pressures to have. I mean, my dreams are coming true. This is what I wanted. So we'll get done recording the shows. We'll get done recording the EP. And I'll build in some time for me to decompress a bit. That's what I need. But so it's Saturday. I'm feeling better. I'll be going to band practice in a couple hours. A friend of mine is in a play that I'm going to go see later tonight. It's the same theater company that I was in. I was lead in a play in 2019, Platonov. That was Chekhov's first play. I got the lead in the play. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. And once this podcast started up and went full time, I just didn't have time to do the acting anymore, so I put that aside. But my friend is in the play, and I'm going to go see that tonight. So I'm excited about that. And then that's it. So that's everything that's going on. And I hope everybody out there is doing well. We're going to end the show with a single from Prisoner. They have a new album coming out, Putrid Obsolete. It's coming out March 15th on Persistent Vision Records. And oh my God, wait until you hear this band. It is brutal. Brutal for my metalhead / crust / grind / hardcore friends out there. This is right up your alley. We're going to end with a new single from Prisoner. It's called Leaden Tomb. I'll add it to the New Scene 2024 Spotify playlist. Look for that on Spotify. Like it, listen to it. I put all of the music associated with the show there. All of my recommendations, it's all there. I'm back next week with a new episode and a new guest. So thanks everybody for listening. And until next time.